Hello everybody, my name is Noah Miller, and today we're going to be going over the new Polyphia album, Remember That You Will Die. Remember That You Will Die is Polyphia's fourth studio release, coming off of New Levels, New Devils, which was the first appearance on a full-length release for their new drummer Clay Eschliman. This is his second album that he's been a part of. So New Levels, New Devils was the start of Polyphia's interest in more integrated chord melody parts, as well as fusing more genres like funk, Latin, and hip-hop into their kind of bread and butter trap, math rock sort of style. This album features some kind of Latin acoustic guitar work and some more metal flavors with guests like Chino Moreno and Steve Vai. In my opinion, New Levels, New Devils was a very focused album with very hooky songs that I go back to this day. Like I mentioned before, Remember That You Will Die is Polyphia's newest full-length release. It dropped on October 28th of 2022. There's 12 songs, lots of guests, and a lot of attitude. However, I feel that there's too many moving parts for Polyphia to really keep straight and really keep organized and focused in the same creative direction. Their ideas, I feel, also don't develop, and they're also relying on a bit of a formula to their detriment, just in a way that they didn't use on their last album. On this album, there's a lot more of a trap bend compared to New Levels, and I think it definitely works in some parts and adds a cool layer and a juxtaposition to what they're doing, but sometimes it kind of adds a bland backdrop to what they're doing, which, in service of the more intricate guitar lines, I suppose, works to that. But they're also no strangers to having busy drum parts, which Clay Eschliman, definitely weaves in there. But at some points he lays it back when I feel like he could throw a little bit more nuggets in there. There's also some more metal flavors coming in with guests like Chino Moreno and Steve Vai, particularly on the track Bloodbath. There's some really chunky extended range, I believe it's 8-string guitar going on there, with Chino Moreno's kind of ghostly wail with his note choice, and it really adds a nice layer to the track. Another thing on the extended range guitars, there's some really cool use and mixing of the super low extended range with the more melodic high end of some of the other stuff, particularly on tracks like Chimera. There's these really cool acoustic guitar lines that get complemented with these really chunky 7-string riffs, kind of almost reminding me of things like Animals as Leaders. There's some really cool points on the Ace side, particularly on tracks like The Audacity, with the kind of staccato, really intricate flows, for lack of a better term, on the guitars and the bass and stuff like that. They're just super tight, super locked into each other. Anomaly sounds very great on the track as well. His style really meshes with Polyphia's and really adds a nice layer to it. Of course, Playing God and ABC, two of the singles that dropped off of the album, they have really nice energy to them. ABC especially, with Sophia Black's performance on it. The J-pop element of it with the Japanese alphabet going on in the background was really fun. Some nice bubblegum pop textures going on in there as well. From Memento Mori to Neurotica, I really feel that they're just kind of relying on a formula to the detriment. It was really hard to parse together where each of the songs started just listening to it, in the background. I didn't really like Kill Station's feature that much on Memento Mori. I don't really like his voice, and then the melodic aspect of the line that he's singing could work, but I don't need his voice in that high fidelity when he actually goes into his verse. Snot's feature sounds good on Fuck Around and Find Out, although I don't tend to really like trap vocals over Polyphia tracks. Although I do understand that at this point, I think they're trying to reach out to an audience that isn't just full of guitar nerds. There are 2 tracks on this album that kind of remind me of Truth anti-smoking commercials, kind of in a similar way that stuff from Bad Bad Not Good would. But there's a bit of a charm from Bad Bad Not Good that I don't really get from Polyphia in the same way when it feels like it could be in the same commercial. It feels like it could be in the same commercial for a different reason. These 2 tracks in particular are Reverie and Neurotica. There are just points where it feels like when the drop comes in, that's when it's like, know the truth about anti-smoking. The last 3 tracks on this album, Chimera, Bloodbath, and Ego Death, they really dial back the trap style production. They take out a lot of the glitz, they uncompress some things, and just kind of let the things breathe a little bit more. It's a little bit more impactful and a little bit more focused of a mix for the last 3, with a few bells and whistles thrown in there because it's still Polyphia. Some of the things that my ears are kind of getting fatigued with while listening to it are, 1, the formula, as I've mentioned before, but 2, also the switch between like 16th note flows and like triplet flows. Sometimes it'll go or something along that line, and it's just really jarring and kind of comes out of nowhere, and I'm not really the biggest fan of it. And also, kind of going into the features of this album, I was really not that impressed with the brass tracks feature, and part of that kind of has to do with just brass tracks themselves. I don't know what it is, but either just the way that he plays the horns or the way that he produces them, it just sounds like someone took a Yamaha keyboard, changed the tone to a horn section, and started playing the lines that they needed to on that. It just sounds kind of cheesy and canned, at least to my ears. And they called brass tracks for a couple of instances on this album. They even called on brass tracks to close out the album at the end of Ego Death with the little horn line of the guitar riff. But yeah, I was not that impressed with brass tracks, and I feel like there could be more potential with horns being involved with Polyphia. I think they could play more of an integrated melodic part rather than sort of serving as a texture backdrop to what they're already doing. I think they could add with the purpose that they were kind of designed for, which was being an emulation of the human voice, and can definitely add a different layer to Polyphia's soundwriting. Soundwriting? It's midnight. Whatever. Like I mentioned, Anomaly sounds really good, and his style really blends in with Polyphia and really adds to their sound. Sophia Black, again, I was very impressed. And like with a lot of features on Polyphia albums, a lot of the features are my first introduction to some of the artists that they feature. I was familiar with brass tracks beforehand, but that's the only person that I was familiar with. Like I said, I wasn't really too big of a fan of Killstation's voice. It just doesn't really fit with what Polyphia is trying to do. Kind of same thing with Snot. I did like his feature, but again, trap vocals just don't really work for me over Polyphia songs, so I really didn't like Lil West's feature on the back end of Chimera, because 1, it kind of comes out of nowhere, and then 2, the bars on it just kind of put up red flags about being the only one that this girl needs, or something to that effect, and that he can like fix her, which is just kind of yikesy for me. I don't know about you guys, but I do not trust him. Chino Moreno sounds great on Bloodbath. Like I mentioned before, his kind of ghostly wail and his note choice is very nice. And then the aggressive vocals that he kind of puts behind his verse are also cool as well. And then Steve Vai, they rightfully give him the throne in the music video and stuff like that. And I really feel like Ego Death is kind of a recognition of the standing on the shoulders of giants kind of concept. You know, they're putting themselves kind of next to bigger people, which in turn raises them up. Not that they weren't great already. I mean, they obviously respect kind of everything that's sort of come before them and where they are and how they got to where they are, but also at the same time embracing, you know, the new sounds and styles and people that are coming up nowadays. There's definitely respect where respect is due for them on that track. And also the extended range guitars are not just like mindlessly chugging on the bottom strings like a lot of bands do. They're actually using like the full range of the instrument and getting really cool mixtures of sounds with things. Steve Vai shows a characteristically mature amount of restraint for his solo. He could have shredded circles around them if he wanted to, but he kind of chose not to for this album, for this track. And, you know, it was very cool. He's kind of like passing off the torch to them, and Polyphia is sort of, you know, touching us with Vai's greatness or whatever. I don't know, some hippy-dippy shit. So my overall thoughts on this album, it's a very logical addition and evolution to and of Polyphia's sound. It's a little by the numbers at points and a little, you know, like I said, there's a bit of a formula going on that I've been able to kind of catch on to. But there's still some cool nuggets, really good performances, really tight performances, really nice features, and just a lot of good stuff all around in this album. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here. However, in the future, I do hope that it's a little bit more organic and less, like, overtly trap-based, like it was on kind of New Devils. I know I've mentioned that album quite a bit in this review, but I think it's an apt comparison because I feel like they're trying to recreate the same kind of magic that they did on that album, because that album I've just played sort of incessantly. It's just very easy to listen to despite how intricate some of those guitar parts are. And it also was a big point of entry for a lot of current fans of Polyphia, myself included. Like, I'd heard of them beforehand and maybe checked out Renaissance or Muse or something like that, but New Devils was what really kind of hooked me into keeping tabs on them. And there's just a similar magic that I feel like they were trying to recreate with it. I tend to feel that first attempts kind of have a certain magic that goes with them that you can't necessarily authentically recreate. And I'm not saying that this album is an inauthentic representation of what they're trying to do and the sorts of ideas and sounds that they came up with on New Levels. Far from it. You know, they sound like they're having a lot of fun. They're not trying to force out these songs. They're not, like, overexerting themselves to do it. It feels really natural to them for these ideas to come through. And the ideas that kind of naturally come through are really quality. So for this album, I'm feeling a light to decent 7. Let me know what you thought about this album in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.